Here's what I know to be true. Everyone leads in their life, in their work, in their relationships, whether they have a title or not. And this podcast is for those of you who felt invisible, underestimated, or like you had more to give than the world made room for. You know there's more in you, but maybe you haven't always had the space, the support, or the tools to show up fully as yourself. This isn't about pushing yourself to produce fake positivity or perfection. It's about dignity. It's about truth. It's about moving from surviving to thriving out loud. So take a breath, press play, and let's grow together. Welcome to Thrive Out Loud. Hey everyone, welcome back to Thrive Out Loud. Today's conversation is about something that a lot of people experience, but very few people talk about openly. A season where you're showing up to work, you're doing the things you're supposed to do, you're building a life and a career, maybe even building a business. But inside, you feel disengaged, unmotivated, maybe even a little apathetic, and you start to wonder, what's wrong with me? For many people, that season comes with more than just frustration. It can come with addiction, self-doubt, attention challenges, questioning of your self-worth, and a constant internal voice that says you're not enough. And when you're battling that voice every day, it becomes really hard to lead your life and reach your vision of success. Today's guest, Andy, knows that struggle first. That's when Andy and I first started working together, he was trying to build his insurance business, but internally he was wrestling with a lot. Addiction, lack of motivation, difficulty trusting himself, and feeling stuck between who he was and who he knew he could be. What I respect about Andy is that he didn't stay stuck there. He started doing the work, the hard work of becoming more self-aware, learning how he's wired, taking ownership of his choices, and building the kind of self-leadership that changes everything, not just professionally, but personally as well. Today, Andy's going to share what that journey looked like for him, the good parts, the hard parts, and the moments where he had to decide whether he was going to stay in survival or step into something more. Because thriving doesn't start with a perfect life. It starts the moment you take ownership of the one you have. Andy, I'm really glad you're here today. Thanks for being willing to share your story.
Thanks for thinking it's worth sharing, but I appreciate it.
Well, we're all happy to have you here. And, this podcast is about everyday people, and we all have stories. And I think that people are going to benefit from yours. So tell us a little bit about you. So, tell us whatever you want to share about who you say you are and
Sure.
what are the things that are important to you in life.
Yeah, good question. 56, I think. I'm married happily for 25 years. I think it's my 25th anniversary this year. I have three children. They're grown, 21, 22, and 23. I have a great relationship with them as well as with my wife, who's maybe one of the funniest people in the world I know. So,
She's a great
um,
lady. I know that.
yeah, I'm an insurance agent. Kind of have a little different niche than anyone else. I work with apartment building owners primarily. We'll talk about this later, but I really just focus on being in relationship with my customers, my children, my family, my wife, God, my community. I kind of a servant leader, not the smartest guy, but I certainly love to help and be with other people. That's kind of who I am.
Awesome. So, when you look back at that season where you were kind of doing that survival thing, I know we started to kind of really work together several years ago. So, I think since 2005.
Yeah.
And then, we've kind of just kept moving together. We've been friends for a long time too. But if you think back when we first kind of started and where you were surviving more than thriving, what was actually happening behind the scenes?
Well, I'll start off by saying, first of all, the help you've given me I don't know how many times I've said thank you for the changes that I've been able to make in my life because of you and your help. Um, but going back in time, I'm not perfect. I still struggle with a lot of things. But before I started doing the work, there was a ton of self sabotage, a ton of untreated ADD. I chewed tobacco. I was a big fan of cannabis and pot. I grew up with ADD. It was untreated. And for me, it was about not having emotions. So, in the family I grew up in, people didn't have emotions. Having emotions was surrendering. Here I am, a kid with emotions galore. Instead of expressing all those emotions, I just found ways to suppress them. I think it started as I was going through adolescence. Around 11 or 12, I discovered caffeine. I could have a soda and get that sugar and caffeine buzz. May have even started earlier with sugar. Every day drink I had was pure sugar. Grape high C or apple juice or cran apple or cranberry. I was basically just mainlining sugar.
Ugh, I remember those days. Ugh.
Yeah. Then as high school started, I found even more ways to suppress my emotions and to stay on that even keel. First, I discovered chewing tobacco. And after about five attempts where I threw up, I finally learned how to chew tobacco, which is probably one of the grossest habits in the world. And then I started drinking and smoking pot. The pot and the drinking didn't have quite the effect that the nicotine did. This was just a way to keep in control, to not surrender. Um, eventually, I could put in a chew, so I never got sad, never got too sad, or never got happy or too happy. I was just always in the middle, essentially sedated by nicotine. Yeah, and eventually I realized, before I started doing the work, I think I realized I had uh, chew, you know, chewing is what a chew is what I refer to having chewing tobacco in my mouth. I think I had it 1 in 80% of the time I was awake.
Wow. And how do you think what other ways do you think it controlled you? Like, having that as a habit, like, what was it that, it just you had to have it?
Yeah. Nicotine is really a disease, and it kind of works the ways that when I was scared about doing something, I had to chew. When I was excited about doing something, I had to chew. So every time I wanted to do anything, whether it was exciting or fearful or scary or whatever, I had a chew in, and it made me feel, like I didn't have to worry about it because I had something else to worry about.
So, tell me what parts of your life look fine but weren't back
It's a good
then?
question. I don't know that any parts of my life, well, they probably looked fine from the outside, but I think I was struggling in almost every facet in some way. I was really good at hiding it. I was the youngest of 3. I learned how to not be noticed in my family, in school. So everything probably looked fine. Was it? Probably not at all.
Sure.
Um,
That's that part of it. It looks okay, but it sure doesn't always feel okay, right?
yeah.
And you're kind of hoping that people don't see what you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yep. So, um, anything else that comes up that you think's important to share about like where you were at that time? Like, how was your relationship, with your at home? I mean, you had smaller kids then. You're in, with your wife when you were first starting. What was home life feeling like for you?
Well, a lot of it was just, it wasn't focusing on things that were important as much as just getting through the day to day. I didn't do any planning, Carrie and I didn't do any planning. We were just worried about, you know, where's the next, how do we pay for the next week? Or, you know, how do we get these kids to sleep? I wasn't thinking about anything important. Um,
Yeah,
I was
that's that
just
survival mode, right? You got so much coming at you, you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other, right?
yep, and that's all I was doing, is just trying to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. So let's talk about that internal voice, that one that tells you you're not enough or, you can't do enough. How loud was it back then? And what were some of the things your gremlin said to you inside your head?
Well, I'm thinking about a an exercise that you went through well as well when we were in the experiential group back in the 30 years ago.
Yeah, our leadership training days.
Yeah, exactly. Keep thinking back to the lifeboat. So there, we had the
Oh,
exercise where there, I think it was there weren't enough seats in the lifeboat. Where are you going to give up your seat? And because there wasn't enough room. And essentially, I think it's, will you advocate for your own seat? Will you advocate for your own life? And without question, I was willing to give up mine because I didn't think mine was important enough. I didn't think I was important as, the person standing next to me or the other people in my life. I was just there. And that's kind of how I survived and acted in life. I was just there, and everyone was more important, whether it was my brothers or my dad or, my mom or whoever, or, then my wife and kids. I was just there supporting others and was willing to give up who I was because I wasn't important.
yeah, that's that part of like you weren't even remotely on your radar screen. You were making sure that everyone else was on your screen, but you got missed.
Yep.
So what was the cost of that? Let's talk about the cost of it physically for you, and then we'll go to, like, emotionally and mentally. So what was the cost physically for you to kinda stay in that survival mode and to come from that place of not enough?
Well, I mean, I did a lot of damage to my body, whether it's loss of brain cells by partying and drinking, or, you know, pushing on the edge of, cancer because of the amount of nicotine I chewed. And, I didn't focus on exercise. I didn't focus on my diet. So, over that period, I gained, I'm still struggle with my weight, but I gained a lot of weight. I mean,
Yeah,
um, I've lost about 50 pounds, but still, yeah, I've got more to go. But just, I just didn't have any drive to make those positive changes in my life um, to get me out of it, and just kind of, I mean, just kind of eroded who I am. And I mean, this is probably gross, but uh, because I chewed, I was afraid of the doctor telling me to stop, or the dentist. So I don't think I went to the dentist for 10, 15 years. So,
oh, yeah, there's that part of avoiding because you're,
yeah.
like, so you feel like you're making you feel that shame of, "I know I shouldn't be making these choices, and I am, and I know they're not good, but what do I do?" Yeah,
Yeah, I had a lot
yeah.
of those.
Yeah, well, I think we all have. That's the whole point is, it's messy. Life is messy and we can't pretend that it's not. So,
Yeah.
um but that emotional part you were talking about, you just really didn't weren't you were chewing and doing all those things so you couldn't have emotions. So, how did emotions come up for you? What did they look like when you did have them
Uh,
during that time?
it's a good question because there weren't a lot happening,
Well, I remember you telling stories like, your wife would say, okay, you're yelling, or your kids would think that you're yelling because you were upset, So it might have come out maybe a little bit kittywampus for you. Like it would
Yeah.
come out bigger than maybe you wanted it to be because you'd maybe been suppressing it.
Well, especially once I started making the changes, once I quit nicotine, I mean, one of the big issues I had is when I started making these changes is I think someone told me, whether it's you or whoever, is that, the moment that I started chewing and started getting addicted to nicotine, I think my emotional growth stopped at that point.
Yeah.
So essentially, and maybe it stopped earlier because I was self satisfying myself with sugar, to keep on an even keel. And maybe I just never learned to have those emotions. So once I did get in recovery from the nicotine, I had absolutely no idea how to deal with my emotions. And so
Ah,
I was pretty tough to deal with for my wife and my kids. And, when I get frustrated, with my kids, I just didn't know how to deal with it because I didn't have the capacity or ability to deal with my emotions.
yeah. You don't learn those tools because your tools have been your addictions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So think about like mentally, like doing all those things, chewing and drinking and smoking and all that. How did that affect your brain? Like how did it affect your ability to think and get things done?
Um, I always struggle to keep up with stuff. I don't know if how did it affect my brain?
Yeah,
Well,
did you always feel like you were in a fog? Did
yes.
you feel like you couldn't yeah.
I always felt like I was in a rut. I was never proactive in life. I was only reacting. And it's weird when I had to react and do something, you know, the first thing I did is, you know, chew, get high, drink, one of the three. And it just, you know, yeah, I got through the day, but did I accomplish what I needed to? Did I improve my family life? Did I improve my relationship with my spouse? No, I just got through that day.
Yeah.
And,
We used to call that The Walking Dead. Remember
yeah.
that? I mean,
And
I remember just even when we were in leadership, we would tease each other about, yeah, well, you're acting like The Walking Dead today.
I was the walking dead.
Yeah, I remember us saying that to each other.
But there were sometimes I'd step out of it. Like people like you and other people close to me could see that I wasn't or I shouldn't have been there. And I had a lot more to offer the world. And
Yeah.
it's
Some of us were a little relentless with you about that, like,
yeah.
"Stop it."
Well, which I
Yeah,
needed. Um,
yeah.
I wasn't, my mom died when I was in my mid 20s and she was the emotional center of my life and I didn't know, you know, I had brothers, they were a lot older. Um, I just didn't have I don't know, any emotional intelligence. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but
Yeah, that's that emotion like you didn't know what you were aware of or what you were feeling, you couldn't regulate it. Yep. Yeah, and anything that was motivation for you had to be external. It couldn't come from within you because you were covering it all up. It sounds like with just your addictions.
yep,
Yeah. Yep. Been there, done that.
yeah.
So let's talk about the breakthrough. Was there a moment or maybe a series of moments where you just knew, like, I can't keep doing this to myself? What was the breaking point for you?
It's a good question. I was thinking about this when you asked, and I know that there I know that with my work with you, I've had a ton of breakthroughs. I don't know that there was a specific breaking point.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily this big dramatic thing. Was it more like a slow drip?
Yeah, there was kind of, and it's something. Well, one night when my mom was dying of cancer, she made me promise to quit chewing. So, because she didn't want me to get cancer and to die, which was something that kind of dragged me down for a long time because I felt like I was I was not honoring that relationship and that wish of my mother. And then as you and I started working together, we talked about, you know, living
Yep.
and everything, whether it's living day to day or whether I'm going to live or die. I looked at these three beautiful little kids and I realized that I wanted to live. And if I was going to continue, first of all, with chewing, y- you know, I wasn't going to be around, or I was going to be the ugliest parent in the world because I wasn't going to have a jaw. So I think that big breakthrough is just deciding that I wanted to live, and then we started the work and there was a lot to peel back. And that nicotine addiction, that was harder than anything. I think I've been trying to quit probably since I started. And I think I said it before, but I was chewing 90%. Yeah, basically, I had a straight line of nicotine 90% of my waking time. I started trying to quit, really in 2007. I tried everything I could think of. You helped me with different options. Eventually I ended up in Nicotine Anonymous, which is similar to AA. Uh,
Yep.
I struggled for, about 2 years in Nicotine Anonymous, but I just kept going to meetings. Um, and then maybe this is a breakthrough date, but April 9th, 2012 was probably the most day in my life looking back. It's the first day, of my nicotine free life. What followed was really important. To make this work, I tried to follow the 12 steps. The first three were definitely the most important for me. And one of the really good things, I was going to church, but one of the really good things about it is I really realized that at that point, as part of my work and who I was, you know, accepted and surrendered to God, that word that I struggle with, surrendering,
Yeah.
I still struggle with it, but I really realized that I had to turn over and have a relationship with God. And so that day really helped me move forward.
That's that choosing. Again, that's, it's not necessarily comfortable, but you chose you over the discomfort of letting go of that addiction.
Maybe that's also the day I chose to get in the lifeboat.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Yep. You finally chose to get in. Very good.
Yeah. And once I did, everything changed. Started moving forward in life.
Yep. So when you think about who you were then versus who you are now, what have you become aware of about yourself, and what was hard to admit and now what do you celebrate?
Well, what was hard to admit is I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. So that was, one part is, you having these emotions that you don't know how to deal with because in the past you'd placate yourself and just, do anything you can to eliminate the emotions. But now I have them and I don't know what to do about it. Um, so that was tough. Um, one thing that I really, I didn't learn it right away, but when I realized that who I am was about being in a relationship, that was really kind of a big part of my self-awareness is realizing that I need to be in relationship with my family, my wife, my kids, my, extended family, that I just needed to focus on being in relationship with my friends and my clients and, most importantly with God. The minute that I realized that, step back, and a lot of it was your help, is just realizing that, you know, money wasn't driving me. Other things weren't driving me. The only thing that really drove me was just being in relationship and being with people. And it changed a lot of what I did. It's like, yeah, I'm coaching the kids, sports teams, but I coached it for a different reason than other people. I wasn't coaching it because I wanted my kid to be the best. I coached it because I wanted to be in relationship with my daughter and get to
Mm.
know the parents and the kids and make a difference in their lives, not just to have the best kid on the team because my kids were great, but they were never the best. But I loved being around them because I was in relationship with them. It also became apparent and, other things is because I realized I was about relationships, I turned over things that I wasn't good at and that didn't drive me, like, you know, the finances. I mean, I let Carrie do them all. And, you know, what do most couples fight about? Money.
Yeah.
What do we fight about? Not money, because she takes care of all that burden. And I thank her every day for it because it's taken it off my things. And yeah, that's probably something that would have made me chew on a regular basis or go in the garage and get high, whatever. But not having to worry about that, I could just focus on being in a relationship, which is what drives me. So I guess that's my self-awareness is, who I am.
How did getting to that point, especially in creating relationships with your clients, how did that change your business or your book of business? What did you notice there at work?
Um, I could tell you once once I started focusing on relationships, I stopped worrying about money. I stopped worrying about how much, this client was going to generate or whatever. I just focused on, my clients, who they were, what they needed from me. Yeah, I mean, I could also pick the relationships that I wanted to be in. I could
Mhm.
tell if, a lot of it you help me with is we figure out which relationships will help my business move forward. Is this going to be one that, you know, helps me, helps that client? Yeah, then let's move forward. If it's one that's not going to serve, either of them, or I'm not going to be able to serve them because, I don't have what they want, or, they're not the type of business that I need to help grow my business. That's not a relationship that I need to be in. And one of the things I didn't have before, and I still struggle with it, I didn't have the ability to say no.
Mm.
I was willing to work with anyone if I'm like, oh, they want to work with me. But, then it was hard because everything's about relationship. I didn't want to make anyone angry. But, once I learned to say no, tell someone you got a good deal, just stick with it. Or, I don't know that I can help you, or you need to find someone else that specializes in this. That was great because it really helped me grow my business because I was able to focus on what I was good at is
Mhm.
being in a relationship. And I got to focus on the type of customers that I wanted to, which I don't not sure how it happened, but I fell into this where I really like working with apartment building owners. And, I've designed and focused my relationships around that. And, with the help of you in my business, we step back and we go, all right, well, what can we do? What's possible? What would help, my business grow? And, you know, I'm not a cold caller. I'm not someone who's going to call everyone. Everything I've done is based on relationships and referrals. Hell, I don't even ask for referrals much. It just comes
Yeah.
to me now. But we stepped
Because
back
of
and
the
said,
relationship, right? Because
what?
you've got relationship with
Yep.
people and you're the guy, right?
Yeah.
You're people's guy that's gonna give you what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, we looked at possibilities and this works for me. It's not going to work for everyone, but we realized it's like, yeah, apartment buildings, great. How do we expand that? What are the options? What are the possibilities? I mean, I don't know how many times you told me that. We probably went over that subject and you probably said one out of the possibilities probably 50 or 100 times. But then we eventually, I determined that there's I'm in Chicago, so there's these building owner groups in specific neighborhoods that are all just apartment building owners. So I just started going to those and going to them and getting more involved. And, I'd get customers out of it and then they'd give me referrals. But I even got to the point where I'm like, well, I'm in one group. They got me on, I was asked to be on the board of directors because they saw that had relationships with people. So from that, I stepped back and, you know, we did that same exercise and you're like, what's the possibility? And so we take that same thing and they're like, well, you could start your own. So I started my own builders owner group. And then there's an umbrella organization over these building owner groups. So I got involved with that. So I, over time, improved, who I was in the industry. I have the expertise, I have the context, I have the relationships, and was just able to, create a business and a world that, provided the career I want. And I know you'd get mad at me all the times because I'd make goals, but not mad at me, but you say, what are the numbers? And,
Yeah.
you know, going back, now that we talk about it, I didn't think about it. You're like, you got to know the numbers. And it's hard to worry about the numbers when you focus on relationships. So you'd ask me to get the numbers. So where can we grow? But, you know, maybe we should have stepped back and maybe we should have said, let's talk about the numbers of relationships that you develop instead of the numbers. Cause I never got the numbers, but we got to pretty much every goal that I every one of the big picture goals that we wanted for my career, I accomplished.
Yep.
But it wasn't because I knew the numbers. It was just because I truly focused on what drove me, and that's being in relationship with others. But you helped me do that by picking which relationships are you going to want to be in. So,
Yeah, because did you feel like, you could bring your strengths and abilities to those relationships? You could nurture those, and in the end, it was a win-win, right?
yep,
Your clients won, you won. So, I mean, the reason, again, yeah, we all talk about that, especially when we're supporting businesses, like, you gotta know your numbers so you can make decisions, but I think that what we found out, or what I think over the years, if I look back, is, I mean, you practically doubled your business since, you started doing this work because you stayed focused on your best self. Like, you knew
yeah,
exactly what you needed to bring to generate what it is that you wanted. And so, and that is measuring. Measuring your results don't have to look a certain way, and I think what I think is so impressive, if you found your way so you didn't get caught up in things that could hijack your brain. It's like, if I focus on the relationship piece and I know that, then I know it's gonna work out, and it always worked out.
yeah. And you said
Yeah.
double. I think, well, we've had a lot of inflation during that period, but I think I probably, since we started working, probably three or four times what I did when,
Yeah, yeah.
so,
That's it, and that, I mean, that's amazing, and you didn't have to constantly be focused on something that didn't really matter to you.
yeah.
You could do it out of your strengths, doing what works for you, and knowing that as you did that, you could create a win.
Yeah, and I was thinking about something else. I love to play games because of my ADD brain. And
Yeah.
the weird thing is through doing all this work, the games that I play are similar to the way that I am in relationship. I like games that aren't at someone else's expense. So,
Mhm.
even if I'm playing I play games where you're like building something, like Katana is a game I love. You're building something to get the most points. You're not building someone to, screw someone else. And that's kind
Right.
of how my career is, you know, I'm building this with my customers. I'm helping them build their, investment portfolio or their business portfolio through real estate that they acquire, you know, and it's not at the expense of, some other agent down the street. It's just there to help my customers. So,
Yeah. Yep. Well, and so if you think about your customers, like, do you lose customers very often because you've set your business
no,
up this way?
yeah,
Yeah.
not really. And if I do lose customers, it's fine. I'll lose a customer because it's not a relationship that serves the type of business that I need. So,
Yep. Yep.
but I don't lose customers very often. No.
So if you think about how you used to react, numb out, avoid, all those kinds of things, what do you do now when you feel triggered or distracted or tempted to kind of fall back into those patterns?
Well, a lot of it is faith now. My relationship with God, I lead a meditation practice with a couple people twice a week. It kind of really gives me a way to grind myself. And, I get out of practice of this, but if I find myself praying every day, every morning, it really helps because I can step back and know that, yeah, this isn't really that big a deal. The more important thing is just being honest with myself and with God and, living a good life. And, there's other things that I've done that, um, like I walk, you know, twice a week with my best friend virtually on the phone. And what better way to move forward with the problems that you have in life other than just sitting there with 45 minutes or an hour twice a week with your best friend. He's getting exercise, I'm getting exercise. You know how many things we accomplish and go through and talk about,
Yeah.
Um, and
So what are you saying? You can't do the work you need to do by yourself? 'Cause maybe sometimes you need to connect with others. You need to
totally. I mean, and it's with
get
you.
that
I mean,
support from others. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I couldn't have I mean, it's, there's absolutely no way I'd be where I am without, you know, the relationship with you and the coaching that we've done. I mean,
Well, just so the audience knows, like this, I didn't set Andy up so he could like tell everybody how wonderful I am. He really was to tell my
yeah,
story, but it's that point of at some point you need to ask for help, and without that, you don't get very far. And we've all had to ask for help, and it's finding what works for you, and it
yeah.
looks differently for everybody.
And if we go back to what we started to, what was that breaking point? That I wanted to live.
Yeah,
And if we didn't do this work, I don't know that I'd be around. I mean, that's 15 years of heavy nicotine use and, you know, it's no longer illegal, but we'll just say illegal, pot at that point
right, right.
or drinking. And, you know, I don't know if I'd be alive. So, you know what? And I am, and I'm
And you
thriving.
are.
So,
Yep.
I've become more involved in my church. I'm the vice president of the church going forward, and I've been it before and made a difference. And, you know, I make difference in people's lives and my kids' lives and their, friends of theirs and my friends. And, I'm thriving. I guess I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, I'm in a
Yeah.
much better place than I ever could have imagined. Um, and, you know, lot to thank you for that. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be uh, let's hope I'd be here if I didn't do the work, but there's a possibility I wouldn't be. Um,
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't be the same person I am. I wouldn't be as a good a person as I am. So,
So can you say after all this that you actually like yourself now?
oh, totally. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm on that lifeboat. I'm
Yeah.
grabbing people to get on there with me. I'm holding them on the rails. I'm
Yeah.
trying to take those relationships with me on that boat. And if that boat's not big enough, I'm trying to find a bigger one so that more people can get on it.
Yeah.
So,
So how, you think about like you put yourself on your radar screen and the impact of that hasn't just been about you. It's been about all your relationships and you doing that work kind of became like a ripple in the ocean or a ripple in a
yeah,
pond and it got bigger and it impacted others, right?
yeah. Um, I saw something on social media today. I was thinking about, I like to say it's a good thing when you realize your kids aren't assholes, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
good. But, another way to look at it is, I've got three beautiful kids that are all really good people, that are loving to, themselves, their friends, and, the people in their lives. And would they been as nice if I hadn't, done the work? Maybe, but I'd like to think that who I am and the relationships that I have with them have helped them to be better people in life.
Do you think that they are better equipped because you were willing to do your work and so, you were willing to go through difficult things and do you think that they will be willing to do that now because you've been an example of that?
Yeah, I'd hope so. Yeah, I think so. I think they're more well equipped, and they're more well equipped because if they have a problem, I hope they'd come to me, and maybe I've been through that problem, or maybe I
Yeah.
know how to help, or maybe I know where to tell them to go for help, or you
Yeah.
know, yeah,
I think that's that key of, you don't have to do it in isolation. Isolation will not it'll make it so much harder. It doesn't mean you can't, some people can, but it takes so long, you know, to get to where you wanna go if you're taking that journey by yourself.
yeah,
And so, and sometimes we need that professional help, sometimes we need coaches, sometimes we just need a really good friend
yeah,
or it's our family or it's our relationship with something bigger than ourselves. And so it's just find what works for you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The key is be willing to do it. Be willing to do the work even if it's hard because it's so worth it on the other side, don't you think?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think about gosh, all the work we've done over the years and it was hard work, but it was all worth it. It was all worth it in the end because it got us to where we are today. Had we not done it, wow, life could have been so much different. And we're not talking perfection here. It's not like, "Ooh, everything's all, perfect." That's not it. It is that you can for me, I can roll with the punches a little bit better now when things happen. It doesn't devastate me. It doesn't stop me from being able to move forward anymore cuz shit still happens and it's going to, but it is you just feel better equipped and it doesn't knock you off your trajectory in life, it doesn't knock you off the cliff where you can't climb back up, because you've done some of that work.
yeah,
And so I think that that's so key is and everybody's going to do that work differently. So again, it's find your way and I think the other key is what I noticed is you own your strengths now where some of those strengths you thought were weaknesses, and they can be for all of us. But the things that are your strengths, you can leverage them now versus, oh, well, there's not a place for that. There's always a place for your strengths. There's always a place for you to make an impact because of who you are, not who you think you should be.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and it just even going back to like the ADD, it's like, yeah, you could look at something like that as a negative, or you can realize that's something that helps me. Use it that way, and it's beneficial.
Yeah. How do you think it helped you?
Well, I mean, here's a perfect example. Because of it, we redesigned how I worked.
Yeah.
Because of the ADD, I could go down a rabbit hole and get stuck working on one account for an hour and a half instead of chunking down into little segments where I get this, this, and this done, and I keep making it, an advancement on one thing, go down that rabbit hole on one thing, which didn't serve me.
But yet your ADD also gave the ability to think outside the box
Yeah,
or
good
to
point.
really like find things that nobody else maybe have even thought about creating,
Yeah,
And so yeah, it's like anything else, we learn to kind of tame the things that don't work, but we can also use them in other ways and at other times.
totally.
How would you define success today for you? Like if you were to, just give a real quick synopsis of what success is for you, how would you what would you say?
It's different. Well, I'm gonna go back to the leadership too, and I think success for me is just being a strong, personal, loving, and responsible man, And, you know, success is, did I meet someone new? Did I make an impact in their life? You know, did I see the person that's already in my life? Did I make a positive impact in theirs? Did I help their
Yeah.
business? At church, did, you know, is the church going to be able to move forward? Is my relationship with God, there? That's the kind of impacts and success I look at. You notice I didn't say anything about money. I don't,
Yeah,
it's,
and money's not a bad thing. It's just it isn't the end all be all of measuring success in life. And I think we've lost that there are so many things that can give us an understanding of success and be able to own that. Again, it's your vision, it's your definition that matters, not what
yeah,
everyone else thinks it should be. Because again, I'm not a person, I don't measure my success by money either. And it's not bad that others do because again, they're wired differently. They look at different things. It's not good or bad. It is there's so much more than just that. We hope that you find it, right? Everybody hopes that you find more than just that one thing because there's so many things that can lead you to having or feeling like you have a life that makes your heart sing, you know?
yeah,
Yeah. All right. Well, Andy, thank you for being willing to share your story today. And, what I appreciate about our conversations like this is that they remind us that thriving doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't show up one day because life suddenly gets easier or because we finally have figured out everything. Thriving begins the moment we get honest with ourselves. And Andy, your story is a reminder that so many people are quietly walking through seasons of disconnection, distraction, addiction, self doubt and simply just feeling stuck in life. And from the outside, it may look like things are fine, but on the inside, it can feel like you're constantly battling your own thoughts, your own habits, and sometimes even your own identity. And what Andy, you shared today is that the shift didn't come from someone rescuing you. It came
no,
from a perfect plan falling in place. It started with ownership, like this is where I'm at, and this is what I know about myself, and you made some choices and then you looked at how you were naturally wired and you honored who you are versus trying to be something you're not. And you took ownership of the patterns that were holding you back. You took ownership of the life that you wanted to build for yourself. So that's where thriving begins. It's not in perfection, it's built in awareness and taking responsibility for you. And again, responsibility doesn't have to be this heavy thing. And I think we all have this thing like responsibility is like this big, heavy thing that we drag through life. And it really is, do I have the ability in which to respond? And I think that, putting time in to really look at yourself and knowing what works and what doesn't, we figure out I have the ability in which to respond to things, whether it's good or whether it's hard. And the willingness to do that work, most people might avoid, but when you choose not to, so much is possible. The work of learning to lead yourself, because when you start leading yourself differently, everything around you begins to change. So your relationships change, your work changes, your confidence grows, and you begin to trust yourself in a way you may never have before. That's what Thrive Out Loud's really about.
Yep.
So it's not about becoming someone else. It's about understanding who you are, how you're wired, and choosing to show up more intentionally in your life, personally and professionally. So if you're listening today and you recognize parts of Andy's story in your own life, I want you to remember something. You are not forever stuck. The first step forward or towards thriving might simply be the moment you stop avoiding what's hard and start owning what's yours to change. So, Andy, thank you again for your honesty today. And I hope you come back and visit us again and keep telling us about the journey that you're succeeding in. So, thanks again.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
As you move throughout your day, I want to remind you you don't have to have everything figured out to be moving forward. Thriving isn't about perfection, it's about awareness, small, everyday choices, and learning to lead yourself and others with intention. If today's episode resonated, take a moment to reflect. Share it with someone who might need it, or simply notice what stood out for you. If you would like to continue the conversation, connect with other thrivers, and find out about up and coming events, take a moment to sign up for the Thrive Out Loud community. You can find a link on the Thrive Out Loud landing page on my website at dsauderllc.com. Thanks for being here, and until next time, go forth and be fabulous.